Hello everybody, and welcome to our video series on learning SQL. Okay, this video we're going to learn how to insert or get data into our database. That we've created our database and our tables. Now we need to get data into our tables, so that's the insert into statement. And again, as always, all the concepts you learn here work across all databases. The syntax, though, might change between different databases. Okay, so if you're using Oracle or SQL Server, some of the stuff might change ever so slightly, and I'll point out where it should change if I remember, but the concepts do not change. Okay, so let's get started, shall we? And here's my setup that I'm going to be using. Down here in the bottom, I'm using MySQL version 8.0.16. If you've been following along, you must use this version or higher. As of this video, this is the latest version. The reason I need this version is I used check constraints in the first video, and this is the first version of MySQL that supports check constraints. If you're using Oracle or SQL Server, you can use that any version because they support check constraints. Up here in the top left is the schema of the design that I'm using, 4 tables. Here's the latest design based on the last video series that we looked, or video I mean, that was the alter statement, the 2 new columns. And here is Notepad. Notepad is what I use to create my statements in, okay? I don't use a GUI, I use Notepad. So if you want to do it like me, you need some kind of pure text editor. That's why I use Notepad. Can't put in any formatting in your SQL statements, okay? Let's go down to the MySQL console window and type in show databases just to see. Get the cursor out of the way. This is MySQL specific command to show the databases on the server. This is the one I want to use, grades. So I'm going to type in use grades, the word use, and then the name of the database sets the default database. So now grades has been set as the default database. Now all the commands I execute will be executed against this database, so I don't have to indicate which database I want to work with. Okay, let's show the columns from student. Okay, so show columns from student, and here they are here. So here's the columns, here's the data types, just to refresh my memory, as integer, characters, and a date. Okay, great. So let's insert a new student into this table here. Okay. So first I'll go down here and show that there's no data in there. Select star from student. You don't have to understand what this all means yet. Later in another video where I describe the select statement, you'll understand. But for now, you can just type select star from student, and you'll see it says empty set. Nothing came back, meaning there's no records in there. There's nothing in there. So there's no data in that table yet. Now let's put in some data. Go up to the Notepad, and the command to insert data is insert into. Okay. As always, all my SQL statements or keywords are going to be typed in capital letters, but you do not have to because SQL is not case sensitive. Okay. Then you put in the name of the table, which is student. So insert into student. So this says I'm going to insert some data into the student table. And then what you do is, there's a couple of ways to do the insert statement, so I'm going to show a few different ways. So insert into student, and then you put in brackets like this. You put which columns you want to add data to. So I'm going to type in student ID, student number, student F name, and student last name. Okay, you enclose that in brackets. Separate each column by a comma. So this says I'm going to what I have to do is supply a value for each one of these columns. Okay. Notice I'm not supplying a value for the gender or date of birth. If you do not supply a value for all the columns, you have to list which columns you want to supply data to. If I was going to supply data to all the columns, I could have just not put this whole line in, okay? But because I'm supplying data just to a select number of columns, I have to list which columns I want to supply data to. So you say insert into the name of the table, the columns you want to supply the data to. Then you put the word values. Which values am I supplying? Again, they're enclosed in quotation, or not quotations, brackets, okay? So the first one is the student ID. It's a 1. The student number, let's make it 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, why did I put it in quotes? Because look here, student number is a character type. So characters have to be enclosed in single quotation marks, even if it's a number. This is not technically a number because a number would drop off the 0. I want the 0 in, so that's why it's a character. Okay, so it's going to be treated as a character, not a number. Okay, the 1, this is an auto increment, and if you watch the first video, you'll understand what this is. Auto increment says, let MySQL supply the value for me, not me. I can override it and supply a value, okay? So no problem there. Their student first name now, again, it's a character type, so is the last name, so put them in quotes. Let's call this one, make it simple, Bob, and let's do Smith. I don't have much imagination. So as you can see, this 1 corresponds to this student ID. This number or value corresponds to student number. Bob corresponds to the first name, and Smith corresponds to the last name. So they have to be in the order. The values have to be in the order of the column list. If I put Smith here and Bob over here, that would be wrong. Then it would say the first name is Smith and the last name is Bob. That's not what you want. The values match the order that you type in the columns. You can type these columns in whatever order you want. They don't have to match the order that they are listed in the table. That doesn't matter. You can type these in any order you want. Just make sure the values match the order that you typed. That's all that's important. Semicolon. Let's save that and try to execute that and see if I didn't make any typo errors. So let's type in source. And again, source is the command for MySQL that allows us to load an external script file. And it's called try.sql. It's stored in my E drive and a temp directory. I'll execute that. It says query OK. Let's see what it did. So select star from student, and you'll see it put in 1 row. Now it has data in there. Student ID of 1, student number of this, student first name of Bob, student last name is Smith. Don't know the gender, don't know the date of birth. Okay? Okay. Now this worked, but I'm really unhappy with it. Why? This value, student ID, I supplied the value for it, but remember here, I had made it originally an auto increment. I wanted MySQL to supply the value. Now this worked just fine. I didn't get an error message. This version of MySQL allows me to do that, but an older version of MySQL, if I had made it an auto increment like I did, and I tried to supply a value, it would have given me an error message. Other systems also might give you an error message. So if you make a column an auto increment or an identity column or whatever system you're using, you don't want to supply the value. That's why you made it. You want the system to supply the value. So let's change this up and show you how you insert data into a table that has some kind of auto increment type column that we want the system to supply the value. So I'm going to change this slightly. I'm going to take out student ID because I don't want to supply it. I want the system to supply it. So student number, first name, last name, let's change. So we got to take out this. Let's give it a new student number. Let's just make it 987654321. And let's call this person Jane Doe. There. So now student number, first name, last name. Okay, let's save that. Execute that. And again, I'm not typing this. I'm not that quick of a typer. I'm just using the up-down arrow keys to go through the keyboard buffer to show me my last number of commands. So there's what I want to execute. I run it. It says yes. Let's see what's in there. There it is, student ID 2. And there's the person I just entered. Notice the system supplied the value for me. Okay, that's usually what you want to do. You don't want to supply the value. Okay, notice, so you leave it and you make sure the values match the order of the columns you typed in. Okay, let's add one more student. Let's do another Bob Smith. This is a different student. Spell it right. Now, if I just did this, I'll get an error message. I should anyways. Let's try it, get an error message. It says duplicate entry. This I didn't change. And earlier, let's go back here and describe which one am I working with? Student. And you see the student number is unique. Okay, it's a unique key. So you can't duplicate. Again, that's explained in the first video. So every student has a unique student number. So let's change the student number to 345678901. 345678901. That's 8 characters. Now I can save that and load that. Now I've got that. Let's look at them. 3. Now notice the 3 is missing because I actually had tried to input it. So it's a good lesson to learn here that an auto increment does not guarantee sequential numbers. All it guarantees is uniqueness. That's all that matters. Because if I was to delete, say, this second person, Jane Doe, that number 2 is gone forever. Okay, I can't get it back. I can't add them back in. Okay, so I had tried to insert a record and I got the error message and it messed up. It tried to insert it, use that number up, and it didn't go in. So that's where that's coming from. So keep that in mind. Okay, so let's add some courses in to the course table now. So insert into course. That's the table called course. Let's get rid of all this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just the word values. To show you a different way now. Values. What values do I want to add? I want to add SQL 100. That's the name of this course, let's say. Let's pretend. And the name of the course is Introduction to SQL using MySQL. Okay, so notice I didn't supply any columns. I don't need to supply columns as long as I supply a value for all the columns. Okay, but let's try to execute this and see what happens. Now you see course ID. Let's go look at this table. Let's describe this table. Because if you didn't watch the first video or you don't remember, let's refresh our memory. Course ID is an auto increment. So I want the system to supply the value. Okay? And the last command, I inserted in the student. I didn't actually supply a value for the student ID. I did something like this. But what I had was the list of columns up here. Now I don't have the list of columns, so technically it should work, but it won't. Let's run this. So source e/temp/try.sql. Whoa, I hit the tab there. And I get an error. Column count does not match the value count. The value count is 2. I only got values for 2 of the columns, but there are 3 columns in here. Whenever you leave the columns out, it expects a value for all the columns in the table. I don't want to supply a value. So even though it's an auto increment, it still expects a value for that. But I don't want to supply the value. So to fix that, what you do is sort of a placeholder. You put the word null. Okay? So it won't supply a value, but it does fix the column count problem. So there's a value for that column now. It's null. It's empty. It's nothing. So it fixes this requirement of the insert into statement, but it won't supply a value, and MySQL will supply the value. So let's run that. There you go. Let's select star from course. There it is. Okay, so if you have an auto increment or any column if you don't want to put a column list, you must supply a value for every column. If you don't have a value to supply, an actual value, just replace the value with the word null, and that will take care of it. Okay? Okay, let's insert, let's see, what do we want to do next? Whoops, that's wrong. Let's get that out of there. Let's add some data into the semester table now. So change insert into semester now. Okay, and I'm going to show it with the column list, and I will say just semester code and semester year, semester season. What values do I want to supply? Okay, semester code, let's just make that, and again, it's a character base, so I'll make it S. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.1. The year is, let's call it 2018. And the semester season, let's call it summer. Okay? So that's would enter one row. I'm going to show you how I can enter more than one row at the same time. So under the values, in brackets, put your first set of data, then put a comma at the end, and then in brackets, do another set of values. Let's call it S 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.2, 2018. And let's make this the fall semester. And then let's do one more. Let's do S 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.3. Let's do 2018. And make this winter. Looks good, looks good. Okay, now this is how you do it in MySQL. Other systems, some you put the word insert into in front of each one of these, so you have to look at which one you're using, but they all have some way of doing multiple rows at the same time. Okay, so insert semester, great. Let's run this. /temp /try.sql, and 3 rows. Let's look at those. Select star from semester, and there they are. Let's change this slightly. Okay, let's try to enter a 4th one, and let's call it spring. Okay, let's try that. So I'll go down here and try to enter a semester for spring. And note, you have an error in your, did I do it right? Spring. Yes. Oh, comma there. That's the wrong error. Got to leave out the comma. Let's run that again. And it says the check constraint has been violated. What's the check constraint? You remember in the first video, let's look at that. Describe semester. We have, let me see here, show columns from semester. Shows the same. Okay. If you recall in the first video, when I created the semester season, I created a check constraint, which meant you can only put the value summer, fall, or winter. So I'm violating that. I'm trying to put the value spring in the season, and I'm only allowed to put summer, fall, or winter. Okay, so I'm getting that problem. Okay, now let's add data into our grades table. So insert into grade. Okay, let's change my column list. Let's go student ID, course ID, semester ID. Let's do the final grade percent and the final grade letter. I'm going to expand this just so we can see it all on one screen. Change the values. There. Okay, what are the values? So I want to supply a value for all of these columns. Now, I'm going to purposely cause a problem. I'm going to go back here to look at something. So I'm going to do select star from student. 1, 2, and 4. Okay. Let's put the number 3 here, a 1 here, a 3 here. So student ID is 3, course ID is 1, semester ID is 3, and the final grade is 73. And the final grade letter is a B, like that. Let's try to run that. The command itself is correct. Everything's correct about this, but when I run it, I get an error. Something about some kind of foreign key constraint fails for this foreign key. That's the way a foreign key works. A foreign key, and in the first video we created these 3 columns, student ID, course ID, and semester ID, as foreign keys. Once you create a foreign key, you are doing what we call enforcing referential integrity. Okay, which means I can't add a student here with the value of 3, because over in this table, that this column connects to this table, this column and this column are connected together. There is no student with a student ID of 3 in the student table. Look, it's 1, 2, and 4. So I can't give a grade to a student that does not exist. Okay, so the student actually has to exist. So all these foreign key values, 1, 1, 3, have to exist in the corresponding tables. You know, I couldn't say this, give student ID 1, which exists, a grade of 73 in course number 5, because course 5 doesn't exist over here. We only put 1 course in. The course ID for that was 1. Okay, so 1, 1, 3, let's do that. So foreign key, the value has to exist in the referencing table. Now it worked. Select star from grade, and there it is. And what that means is student ID 1, which is this one, Bob Smith, this Bob Smith, not this one. In course ID 1, what's course ID 1? Let's go select star from course to see what that course is. Oh, that's SQL 100, which is Introduction to SQL using MySQL. Semester ID 3. What semester ID is that? What semester is that? Select star from semester. Semester ID of 3 is the winter semester of 2018. Okay? And in that semester, that Bob Smith in this course got a 73 or a B. Okay? So the foreign key forces referential integrity, so it has to exist. Okay? So make sure you have the proper values. Okay? All right, now let's enter a new grade or a new row into the grade table, but let's not give them any marks. Let's do student ID 1 again. No, let's do student 2. Let's do a different student. Whoever student 2 is, that was Jane Doe. Same course, same semester. But let's not give them any marks and see what happens. I have to take those out because otherwise I get an error message. So now let's give them insert them in try.sql, and it worked. Let's see what it did. Select star from grade. Got a 0 and an F. Where'd that come from? Don't forget the show columns from grade. If you watch the first video, when we created this table, we set default values of 0 and F for each of those columns. 0 for the percent column. Actually, this was in the alter tables, alter table video. We put a 0 for grade percent, and final grade letter we put an F. Okay, so we set default values. Default values, as I explained in the first video, is used if you don't supply a value, the system will supply one of these values for the corresponding columns. Okay, so that's it. So I think we covered a number of ways to insert things. We inserted rows with auto increment type columns and let the system do it. We inserted rows without putting a column list. Just make sure if you don't supply the column list up here, then you must supply a value for every column. If you don't want to supply a value for a column, you use the word null just to keep the count even. Okay, so I think we've covered everything for the insert into statement. Okay, hope you enjoyed that video. Please click on like if you did. Subscribe to the channel, it would be appreciated. And if you want to be notified of any new videos that I upload, press the little bell icon. Okay, thank you and have a great day. Take care, everybody.